Welcome to this week's edition of Rugby Unfiltered. I'm your host, Jan de Koning, and with me as usual, Eugene Eloff. Loffie, welcome.
Jan, thank you, man. What a fantastic weekend of rugby. And I know you've got something in your back pocket for us for the future to discuss about Six Nations, which was very interesting. And a lot of Southern Hemispheres, especially South African supporters, were very happy with the results. But Jan, I would like to kick off today to say well done to our Sevens team in Canada. Why I'm saying that is, they played very late in the morning hours. So a lot of people mostly watch the catch-up the next day. But this team is busy building, Philip and them are building a great character in this team. And I'll tell you what, there is speed, there's flair, there's determination. And I like what they're doing. They're creating something from nothing. And it is a great win. It puts them in a top spot to be the top team this year. And congratulations to the team.
Yes, Eugene, you're correct. They joined first with Fiji, and they're all heading to North America for the final round of the league stages. So last year they just sneaked into the top 8 for the championship round, and then won the championship. So they're defending champions, but they didn't win the league last year. So this year they're in line to win the league and the championship double, which is amazing. I mean, they really look like one of the best and most impressive teams. And they're not just lucky to win. They're beating the top teams, New Zealand a bit more regularly, Fiji, and the surprise package to me remains Spain. But it's very enjoyable to watch Sevens. I know Sevens is not everybody's cup of tea, but I enjoy it because, like you say, it's skill for a different type of player, it's speed for a different type of player, and it's a different type of game, and it is enjoyable.
Yeah, I think the big thing that the coaches want there is consistency of teams, and this Spanish team for quite a while now, a few seasons, have been beating big teams, and they've been doing well, but also inconsistent. The worrying thing for me was Fiji looked very average, actually very plain. And I missed that flair of theirs, running from their own lines and our sprinting guys. There was a lack of enthusiasm, if I can call it that way. The top teams are still there: New Zealand, Australia. They're all competitive. Argentina, but I sense that we've moved up a notch. And I think one of the big things, we got speed. We got speed. We got some players there that have got feet and speed, and they can score from anywhere on the field.
I agree with you. Eugene, there's also another very big game. So the final round of the Sevens will be, as I said, in America. But we're going to move on to the big North-South derby. So it's only a UFC match this weekend. Stormers traveling to Loftus Versfeld to play the Bulls. And it's a very important game, both for the Stormers, who are trying to end their losing streak. They're on a 3-match losing streak. And the Bulls, who's just worked their way into the top 8 and looking to cement another place in the playoffs. So it's a very important, it's a catch-up game, but a very important game. And this coincides with the fact that the Stormers last week announced that all their teams, all the Western Province teams, are now playing under the brand of the Stormers, all the professional teams at least. I know a lot of people are going to say, what about the schoolboys? Amateur teams, they stay Western Province. So it's the Stormers, the senior team that plays in the UFC and the Champions Cup. It's the under-23 team that's going to play in that new under-23 competition. It's going to be Stormers 23. It's going to be their name. And then the under-20 team is going to be Stormers Bolt. So that's got a lot of people hot under the collar. I'm not sure what your view is of this, the fact that the Western Province brand or the Province brand is no longer. I suppose it's the same as Transvaal and that. But what do you feel about this?
Jan, to me it seems these days it's too easily we just let go of traditions, and I think we must do it with more respect. And I'm not saying what they've done is not with respect. Sometimes, as business decisions, the unions need to survive. They need money to survive. That's why there's a professional leg to that. So I know there's a lot of people that come with all the eras. And you remember the era of Transvaal, the Lions, the Golden Lions, and all those, they had all these names, and people are not susceptible for change easy. But I do think there is a place to keep tradition in place as well. But those are stuff I leave for rugby politicians, and they have their good reasons why they do that. And it's important that they communicate that with the supporters so they can understand the dynamics behind the decisions. But to me, the bigger thing is on what happens between the four lines, and that game up north is a massive one.
Yeah.
If you weigh it up, currently the Bulls are in the driving seat. They got momentum. They had good wins. Their plane is taking off. But it's a playoff. It's a massive match for both teams. And the Stormers on the other side have battled a bit to find their mojo again. But this is a great game for them, for Dobbo and the teams to get together and say, right, guys, we are the underdogs. Nobody gives us a chance. Let's do something different. Let's go up there and give it our best shot. Because on the day, what happens in 80 minutes between those four lines, that's going to determine. I will not write the Stormers off. I know I'm not a gambling man, but I guess the gamblers or the bookies will say the Bulls. But rugby is a funny game. It all depends if you have all your personnel that can play, how well you prepared, and how rested the guys are, and on the day what happens.
Eugene, I agree with you. What you touched on it earlier, the communication from them. So on this week, John Dobson had a press conference in the build-up to this game, and he tried to explain that. I mean, John is like ourselves, an old Newlands type, Stormers, Western Province type guy, at season tickets at Newlands. So I actually got a clip of John, which we're going to play, and we'll insert it here so that the guys can see. He agrees with it because it's commercially, it's a professional game. The game has moved on. Whether we like it or not, or whether the older guys like ourselves like it or not, these changes come in, and the younger. My biggest gripe is that rugby has almost become a sideshow. If you go to a game now, there's parties and bands and all sorts of things on the outside of the stadium, on the edges of the stadium, and the rugby seems to be like a sideshow. But it's all about money. If you don't make money, you can't pay the players. So let's listen to what John said, and then we'll take it in and we'll discuss the game itself a bit.
Consolidation of the brands and the alignments, having the professional teams, all as Stormers rugby teams, and the amateur teams continuing as Western Province. Your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a very positive step. I mean, when I say that, it's probably like a few of us. I grew up supporting Province, my Province season ticket holders. I think I first went to watch Western Province play in 1976 or 77, and Newlands, and that means a lot. But I think it was almost been an inevitability about it since the Super Rugby, the Stormers thing in '98. They were really running two brands. I think the difference that held out for a long time with the Currie Cup was still, in 2014, there was a Currie Cup final at Newlands that Alistair Coetzee coached. I think we just won it through with, and that was packed. 3 years later, 4 years later, in 2018, we didn't come close to selling out for a Currie Cup final because the Springboks had by then finished playing the Currie Cup. I've been involved in some capacity in the Currie Cup this will be my 12th season, and I think this will be the first time the competition format has been the same, for 2 years in a row. So, us having to support a professional senior brand, a separate brand for a competition that's, as much as we all don't want it, has been in free fall for a long time now, makes it very tough. I think commercially, I think the writing was on the wall. We withstood the longest. The Lions went a long time ago. The Sharks have been the Sharks 15. Something around the old rugby in there. The Bulls became the Bulls. And we sort of stood because of the reasons that probably why everybody's upset now. The tradition, the ethos, and Province and VIP, look at them, which all mean a lot to us, And I think the Currie Cup being gone is a fact for a while now. And then I think that probably leaves, in terms of professional, under 21, the junior teams. And I think it's nice for them to be part of the Stormers. It's their aspiration, they're part of it. It was a bit curious having literally two items of people and experience. Expensive to have the same top with a VIP badge and the same top with a Stormers badge around the HPC. I mean, I say it's expensive, but it aligns them. I think what I like, what I really, so my last point, I think there's been a real ostensible and obvious effort by Stormers Rugby to look more like Western Province. I mean, we could have, I think when the designs first came out, somebody said white shorts. No, black shorts. And it's curious. If you look at that thing, if you look at anybody else, they don't wear black shorts with blue and white. Doesn't exist. And the socks looking the same. The dyes on the back. So it was to show that we are, I think, because that sounds like a silly analogy, Mikey. It's a bit like wine. I mean, the label on the bottle is a nice brand, and it's you go for the sea salt or Sauvignon Blanc or whatever, but that you can't take away the terroir, the land it comes from, where that the vines are grown, and that's, I mean, the Stormers in Western Province, they're like the wine, the actual bottled wine, and the terroir, the region, the weather, the climate, and it's inseparable. It's just practically commercially, and I think we did very well to hold out as long as we did, but I think it's just unsustainable to have two separate brands.
Eugene, yeah, it's very interesting what John said, and you can't disagree with him. You might not like it, but you can't disagree with him, and that makes Saturday's game very, very important because people now, you got to get people to support the brand. You've changed the brand. You upset some of your older supporters, but you're also looking to try and get some new supporters. So, and the way to do that is to go and win in Pretoria.
Yeah, it's not always easy flying up above sea level, but I think the Stormers are hungry for a win again. I think they're hungry to get their rhythm back and to get their mojo back, as I call it always. But if you look tactically at the game, I think playing up there, besides the individual battles, let's talk about the team battles. The Bulls have got a more conservative, Akkies and the team have got a more conservative approach. So their set phases will be, well, they're going to maul and they're going to kick tactically and chase the ball. And I think they're going to keep it very close to the first two channels. Not that they cannot spread it wide. They've done it this year and they've scored great tries. As where the Stormers, if the game is a bit open, if it opens up, they are very dangerous. From turnover ball, from broken play, they can strike also from everywhere. But it's all going to start at the scrums, and that's a tough battle. But the battle I'm actually looking forward to is Pollard versus Sasha. Now, Sasha's gone through a tough time the past few months, and you can elaborate about it later, and we can discuss it. I still rate him as a fantastic player. But I also know there's a process that needs to happen with him where Pollard has got all the experience in the world. He's a calm, cool, collected 10 that will give direction to the game. And I've also seen him miss some easy kicks this year. He's also human. But that battle per se is going to be great to watch. Yeah.
I agree with you. Sasha, it's such a big debate. And we'll get around to it just now. I mean, Dobson also spoke about Sasha and exactly what role he plays in the Stormers. But Tony Brown last week said, Sasha, in a Springbok setup, they've got all the facilities to guide him and to keep him and do what he needs to do. It's a different environment. But at the Stormers, he's trying to do too much to his own. And I think Dobson admits that he's trying to do too much on his own. He's literally trying to do it all on his own. And he needs to use, like Tony Brown said, he needs to start using his teammates a bit more. And I think his youthful exuberance, that inexperience is what's counting against him. When something goes wrong in the field, he wants to fix it himself. And also the captaincy. And that's something that Dobson touched on very succinctly. He made it clear that they made a mistake by making Sasha captain. So maybe it's a good time to listen to what John said, and then we can unpack it afterwards.
I thought JD went fine. He did what he could. He asked for a penalty try. He get the team together. We got our penalty count was 7. He did everything he could. So he'll be the frame for this. Look, I don't think we'll put the pressure back on Sasha because there's logic around that. So, if a Ruan or Dion come into the frame, we can have a look at that. Otherwise, we carry on with JD. We haven't chosen the team yet. But we won't bounce it straight back to Sasha. I thought JD did a reasonable. First, it's going well. I think the noise is a concern. Because he's a youngster. And the sport is so emotional, you know. And Hero a couple of weeks ago, probably a couple of months ago, the best, and now, you know, just with everybody being, you know, you guys are respected and proper publishers, but anybody now can publish, and that stuff gets around. And so, you know, and also there are lots of comments about, you know, a lot of comments about him. So I think he'd have to be pretty. And I think it's a bit sad. The guy's he's a youngster with a massive future. Who's going to be great for South African rugby. As regards, you know, the sort of more formal comments from somebody like Tony, of course, we listen to that. But we also aware that guys with hundreds of tests experience around you and all that sort of thing. So I think Tony Brown is absolutely dead right that he may be trying too much, but we know where it's coming from. He's just desperate for the Stormers to win. I'd rather have that than somebody who's disinvested or looking over his sleeves or trying to manage his body. We've just got to coach better to make sure he takes those right options. But the noise around him, you know, I just don't understand how there could possibly be, you know, vitriol to a guy who's got such X factor and such promise both for the Stormers and the Springboks. You know, one thing about Sasha, and I've said this, Stephen, when we made his debut for us, yeah, the guy made 22 tackles in a Toyota Challenge game. He's so committed to us, and he's so good, and he's so sharp and so invested. You know, and I think obviously you don't become the world's best game managing fly half within your first couple of years. That'll come. That's unfortunately just doing the, you know, serving the hours, but you'll get there. But yeah, it'd be nice if he. I think it'd be great for him if everybody concentrates on him and some other people surprise us. He's very keen to captain, and we had discussed that as his future. I've got something special. I don't know if you remember the game in Durban, Josh. We had a plan for the first restart, which was to isolate Andre, go for the chop tackle in with Dylan Mark, go for the steal, and we score. You know, we get the quick tap penalty and we score. And now Sasha's heavily invested in that plan, wants us to make a fast start. He's the guy who made the kickoff. You would think I think if most of us were captain of that team, you'd be celebrating, yes, you know, the plans come off. Or yes, and start thinking you've got 60 seconds to kick your conversion. But he went straight to the ref and said, shouldn't that be a card? Because they hadn't retreated 10. And I think that shows a remarkable cold-bloodedness and thoughtfulness in our game. I don't think many people would have thought of that. Which just shows, you know, so I think it's, you know, it's remarkable insight. And he was right, you know, the referee sort of dismissed him. So that he's got captaincy material. I think when the mistake I made was the obvious overload of, you know, he's the David Beckham of South African rugby now in terms of the profile. He is the X-factor guy. Our 10 and everybody's 10 is always a game driver, 9, 10, 15. But our 10 sits with, you know, calling the plays. And then to load on the captaincy on a then 23-year-old. That was our mistake, you know. And I think when we had to check him, say, Sash, maybe you just focus on 2 of those 3 things for now. And he was very respectful. I know he wants to captain, and he was very accepting of it. But I think probably, you know, a couple of years' time, it's going to be an absolutely exceptional captain.
Jan, I take my hat off for Dobbo, you know, saying, listen, he made a mistake. And he did. But I'll also tell you, I also praise him for doing that, because sometimes you have to take a risk. And obviously, he took a calculated risk making Sasha the captain and believed in him. And I still believe that he believes in him as a captain. But it is so. Sometimes you throw players in the deep end. Some swim, some don't. He's got massive pressure on him. And with social media as it is, the pressure is more and more, it's mounting. And we can say what we want. As an individual, he hears it. And it will have an influence on him, on his demeanor, on his personality, everything. So maybe good to take him out of the line. Now, take all the pressure off him. Let him play his game, because I believe in the future of South African rugby, he's still going to play a big part. But now's the time to regroup for him as a player, and for the guidance that Tony Brown talks about and Dobbo and them. He needs that guidance. But I felt for him, because and Dobbo was right. You know, he maybe at a lower level you can win all games on your own, but at this level, with the pressure, at professional level, it's about a team game and where you fit in. And every time your role changes, the way you fit into the game plan, into the team dynamics and so on. But I hope he gets back to his own.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I just want to make one thing clear. We're not knocking Sasha as a person. We just acknowledge the fact that he's not having a good form, and that maybe he's a little bit over enthusiastic and trying too much, like everybody says. It's pretty obvious. But what I want to move on to, Eugene, there's a massive weekend of Six Nations coming up, and you touched on it early in the piece. There's a big South African influence or interest in the Six Nations. So France are hosting England. As we all remember very well, that Steve Borthwick said before the tournament, he sees this game, France-England, as the title decider. His team will be there. The reality is France are going to going to Paris. They have only won one game. They're out of the running. So, but it's still a very important game. England can still mess it all up for France, because France lost to Scotland last week, a massive game. Influenced heavily by another South African, Peter de Villiers. And France on Saturday will have a Springbok in Flock Sillier as their kicking coach. You know, he's been with them for quite a while now, in a couple of World Cups as well, and he's been very influential in that team. So I think the big thing is the scenarios. And I want to run through a few scenarios, because I mean, either France, Scotland or Ireland can still win the championship. So for France, if Ireland beats Scotland, then any win for France will give them a championship. A draw wins them the championship if they get 1 bonus point, or Ireland beats Scotland by 63 points. Ireland can win if they beat Scotland by 63 points. A loss with 2 bonus points win them the championship if Ireland don't get a try bonus point. So it's all these funny things. So if Ireland draw with Scotland, then obviously, as we said, any win. If Scotland beat Ireland, they need England to win with and France not get a bonus point. So Scotland need to then get a bonus point win and make sure that France don't win, or they don't beat England. So Scotland need, it's all these scenarios of how many points. There's a points difference that comes into the equation as well. So for France, any win them the championship. So if they beat England, they win the championship because they got a point ahead. Even if Scotland get a bonus point, Scotland need a 58-point deficit. So they need to win by 58 points more than France beat England with. So if France beat England by 1 point, Scotland need to win by 59 points. If they win by 10 points, then it's 69 and so on. So it's a massive deficit to make up, points difference. So France is in the driving seat. France is a team that can actually win the championship, but it's not going to be easy. And obviously the other big game, then Scotland, Ireland in Dublin, it's going to also be a massive game. So there we have Peter de Villiers, who's been coaching the Scotland scrum for a while now. And we've seen this past weekend exactly against France, exactly how strong that scrum is. And then obviously we got the France team that want to make amends for last week's poor performance.
Yes, Jan, all those statistics that you talked about now, it's just a lot of noise and information that doesn't matter. The team that is in the driving seat, the teams are there. This, as I mentioned earlier, what a great win for Scotland, what a great win for Italy. But there's some humor to that as well, because England's coach, and I'm not hammering him, but if you say things in the press, you must be able to back it. I think Sasha also says something like that. You have to back it up by your game. So he said, I think it was in November or December last year, he said, there are eras in teams, and that's a fact. There are eras in teams. And he said there was the era of New Zealand, and then there was the era of South Africa, and now it's the era of England. I've got bad news for him. He needs to go back to the drawing board. So it's going to be great to follow that. I think pretty much clear we know who's going to win the Six Nations, and it's been entertaining. It's been entertaining to see underdogs win top dogs. You haven't won a game until the end whistle blows and you're ahead on the points.
I agree with you. Just one thing to follow up on what you said about Steve Borthwick. When he was making those statements, his team was on an 11-match winning streak. They then made it 12 with the first round of the Six Nations. But Rassie Erasmus made a very good point last week. He says, go look at the teams that England beat. They beat a New Zealand team. That's their one big one, or their biggest win from last year. And Rassie says maybe that win by England puts South Africa's big win in Wellington in perspective. New Zealand is not a team in a good space at the moment. They've lost their coach already. They fired their coach already. So there's something amiss with New Zealand. So how important or how big was that England win? And Rassie suggested that maybe England's wins were padded, and that means they were beating weaker teams. You know, it's like he used the analogy: if a Cheslin Colby steps a prop, you know, does that make Cheslin Colby a good player, or was it he just step a prop who's slow and you know? So that's the analogy, and I think England must maybe have a relook at them, and maybe they'll put up a good form as their last performance before they come to South Africa in July. So they need to get something right, and let's see what they do on Saturday.
Yes, we're looking forward to the July test, because they also said they're the best scrumming team in the world. So I'm sure Daan Iman and the guys they're licking their lips already, because we're going to scrum. That's all we just call scrums. No, guys, you know, one thing about rugby, it is entertaining. Just like when you talked about, it's not about what happens on the field, it's also important, but they have to bring the entertainment to the game, and also coaches and players off the field bring some entertainment to keep us busy and to keep the game alive.
Eugene, there we have it. That's it for this week, and hopefully next week we have a really good guest. We hope he can make it, but I'll keep that in the bank for now, and we'll have something on the Six Nations next week, and maybe a proper wrap from somebody inside the Six Nations Champions camp. Till next week, from myself, Jan de Koning, and Eugene Eloff, enjoy the week.
Cheers.